Okay. So tell us what you've got going on here. What's happening
Okay,
here?
we have a station here. This is wood splitting, and we split the logs to make rails for rail fence here. You notice in the back. All over in this area, we're hewing the log to make log cabins, and this is a cabin we started making in 1992. So you see how slow it is. And then up at the very end, we have a crosscut saw. They're letting the youngsters use a crosscut saw. And then back down on this end, we're splitting shingles to make shingles go on the roof of the cabin like this here.
Wow.
So these are the things we do here now. This is referred to in school days as the wood station, and the kids come out, and in the wood station they do most of these hands-on things. And then they do some things with trees and animals, and the animals up here that the guy has, we have some of those animals in the woods also. And we also do some things with trapping and the early foods. You know, the early settlers were either gatherers or hunters, and so we do some things with them gathering and some things with them doing hunting. But it's really interesting. Kids really enjoy it. And I've been working here since the very onset, '92. So it's really interesting, and it's good for the youngsters.
So tell us your name again.
Burton Marsh.
Yes. How did you end up with your engines?
Well, I've been interested in steam about 20 years.
He never bought one, he always got them.
I've been interested in steam about 20 years. I got first in old gas engines and tractors. But I've been interested in old iron and all kind of antique stuff all my life. And I have several buildings full of stuff like this here in the Peinhardt Museum.
Wow.
And I'll be 88 years old in December. And I'll have a birthday party on the 29th of December, which is Saturday. We'll have 150 people around. So if y'all want to come, you're welcome to come.
That's great.
We serve some food and various things. But we got a nice museum up there at the Farm Museum, similar to this. And I've been collecting all my life, really.
Really?
Really.
So, were you interested in engines as a child, too?
Yeah, I grew up on the farm, and we had engines to pull grist mills and well pumps and various things all my life. Of course, we also made a little whiskey along the line somewhere. But it was a way of life with our people in our part of the country. And people made a living by making their moonshine. And we learned to drive the trucks at night without any lights. You could stay on the country roads just as good as you could in the daytime because we got used to it. We drove so much at night. You unhook your brake lights and everything. So the law would come in the daytime generally and check people, but they never could find whiskey in our place. But we were making it all the time, and we had a barrel, 50-gallon barrel buried in the front yard right in the middle of the road, and the law would pull in and park right over that barrel of whiskey and never know that it was there. People had come from Birmingham and also come from Atlanta, Nashville, everywhere to buy that moonshine whiskey at $10 a gallon, all cash money. And if you had charred whiskey, it was $20 a gallon. So you go out to the barrel, you rake the gravel back, get your sump pump, pull you up 5 gallons. You never sold under a gallon at a time. 5, 10 gallons of what, got the cash money, and they took off. That was the way of life back in our time, back in the 30s in Limestone County.
Wow, Limestone.
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool.
They drove all the way from Birmingham to Limestone County.
Yeah, they'd come from Atlanta.
That was
wow.
You must have made good stuff, man.
It was good stuff, good whiskey. It was good whiskey. The way you could tell, you had to cut your whiskey. When you made whiskey, it was too strong to drink, so you mixed it with water. And the way we checked it out, we'd take a jug, put a little whiskey in it, and when you mix enough water, you shake it up, and 3 beads would hang together at the side of the jug. It was just right. It was cut just right at that time. So that's how we knew when it was ready to drink.
Was it almost 200 proof when you made it?
It was. It's so strong it'd take your breath. So I made whiskey when I finished in high school myself. Me and my brother, we made enough whiskey to pay for a 41 Chevrolet convertible before we finished high school. In 3 or 4 months, we made the pay for that car.
Wow.
But anyway, it was a way of life, and everybody in the country. I knew one old black man that had 12 kids, and all those kids went to college and got a degree from making whiskey. He sent them all to college, and it was all from making whiskey.
Wow.
And that was just a way of life back then.
Great. Well, thank you for telling us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us what's going on here in terms of...
Okay, well, I represent the Heartland Quilt Guild, and we've been coming out here for, 8, 10 years, I suspect, teaching the children how to do hand sewing, and we are making 4 patches with the kids this year, and they learn how to do hand sewing, and hopefully they'll go home and make a pillow or make a picture frame with their little 4 patch that we're making, and we enjoy showing the children how to sew and to instill the craft, and hopefully someday they may want to do this themselves. And our boys tend to be very good at stitching, and I think they have a good time doing it. We have a good time showing them how. And let me see, we'll turn that this way.
What are you making there?
This will be a 4 patch, and it will sew. It will end up like this. So we take 4-inch squares of fabric and put these together. You're ready to go, Houston. Whoops! No, you're not, because I didn't put a needle or a thread in there. Put a knot on my thread.
Did you make all the quilts that are surrounding?
I did not make all of them. I've made several. Our guild members bring samples to hang up.
Great. Tell us about your guild.
We meet once a month, and we like to promote the art of quilting, and we have all levels of quilting skills. We have beginners to state symposium members. In fact, we had one member some years ago that had a quilt in a national show. So we have all levels of quilting skills, and we'd love to have new members to come. There you go, Houston, you can start again. And so we just enjoy people coming and visiting and learning about the craft.
Great. And it's Heartland Quilters?
Heartland Quilters.
Great. And do you meet in Cullman?
We meet in Cullman. We meet the second Thursday night of the month at Christ Covenant Church. And we meet at 6:30, and usually we're a couple-hour meeting and have programs.
How did you get started in quilting?
I quilted probably 30-some years ago, well, more than that. We've been in Cullman 30 years, and when we moved, I had a full-time job and didn't have the time to do anything then, and my mother-in-law got into quilting, and when her health failed, I picked the craft back up again, and have done it more full-time since then. And so you just keep going.
Okay. What are the benefits of quilting? Does it help you relax?
It helps to relax. In my case, I have arthritis in my fingers, and it helps keep my joints going. you know, it's a very peaceful pastime to have, and you're able to have a product at the end. Whoop! What? You're going to lose your thread out of there. Okay, there you go. You just about had me to have to made me thread another needle, didn't you? But you have something to show after all your hours of work. It's kind of like, not quite like building a house, and well, I guess it is, because you have your raw product, you cut it up, piece it together, and you have an end product. So it's kind of a fun craft.
This was like a social thing back in the day.
Well, and it still is.
Yeah.
They had the sewing bees usually with the churches, that the ladies would get together and sew and gossip and keep up with what's going on in the community. But it's just a nice way to pass on an old craft, and we like to get the young people involved to keep the craft going, and hopefully someday down the road they'll want to get into it a little more involved than just doing a basic floor patch and go from there.
Okay, in the 1800s they made candles, but they used the talon from a butchered hog. In the late fall or early winter, they would butcher a hog, and they would use the talon from it, and they would make candles, and they'd have to make a lot of them because they burned real fast, and they stunk real bad. But then the richer people could use beeswax and make candles, but there weren't many people that could buy the beeswax. But then in the 1850s, they discovered paraffin wax, and they started making candles with that. And so you just start, they don't smell, they last longer, and so you start out with just the wick, the string, and you just dip it over and over and over until you get it. This is about 4 or 5 times. This is about 35 times. So it makes a difference, and you can make them as big or small as you want, but they had to make so many, so I'm sure they didn't make them very big, because they burn so fast anyway. Now, today they have the molds. Of course, we have electricity now, and but back then they didn't have electricity, so they had to make their own candles. And every time they butchered the hog, they would make them. They would make lots and lots of them. But today they can even pour a mold and do them faster. So that's the kind you have today. But these are fun, and it helps them learn.
Explain to us what hominy is.
Okay, well, first of all, here at the Peinhardt farm, we try to portray times as they were in the 1930s. In the 1930s, people used what they had. Hominy is made from corn. Of course, they ate corn fresh in the summertime, boiled corn, creamed corn, corn. They fed corn to their animals. But then sometimes corn dried. From dried corn, you could, in the wintertime, whenever you had time, you could take the dried corn, soak it overnight, put it in water the next day with lye. The lye would make it puff up, the husk would come loose, and you could wash it many times, 7 or 8 times, get the husk off, and at the same time you're getting the lye out of the corn. And that was yet another way to preserve the corn, because you could dry that corn, you could make the hominy any time during the winter. To make the lye, they did not buy lye. You would take the ashes from the fireplace or the wood stove, put them in something called an ash hopper. It could be built, it could be a hollow log. Put it under the eave of a house. The water dripping through it would make lye. It could be now, hominy is made with any kind of alkaline lye, soda, but it was just a process of them using what they had. If you're not familiar with hominy, let me show you how it starts. It starts as dried corn, which is shelled, and put into a pot with water to swell up. You let that do overnight, and then you put it in the next day, put it in here. It takes about 4 hours to cook. to loosen up. And then as you wash it again, you wash it many times to get the husk off and get soften it up. And now this is made with yellow corn, so it's going to be yellow. This is the finished product made with white corn, with all of the husk off. This, by the way, has twice the protein of what you get in a canned corn in the grocery store. Twice the protein, half the fat. Twice the food value.
Hi, what's your name?
My name is Dean McMahon.
Dean McMahon?
McMahon. I'm a retired school teacher,
Uh-huh.
but I learned to do this years ago, and I do it for a hobby. So right now it's called splitting white oak.
Mm-hmm.
These are called white oak splits when you get it finished. And what you do is you cut down a tree, and then you quarter it, and you eighth it, and then you you cut the heartwood off and leave the sapwood. You skin the bark off,
Uh-huh.
and then you slowly split these into strips. Now these are too thick, and what I'll do is when I get this done, I will split it again, make it thinner.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get it down to how thick I want it, I'll put it on the shaving horse and smooth it down so that I can use the pieces to make baskets.
Mm-hmm.
And we have cotton baskets, corn baskets, and egg baskets. And those in the days when my grandparents and our ancestors, they didn't have anything to pick cotton in or to tote corn in or gather eggs, so they had to make whatever. And somebody realized that you could take white oak in the woods and split that into little thin strips, and it's very pliable, and you can make then a basket, as you see these baskets around here are.
Right.
But,
When did you learn this?
oh, about 20 years ago.
Wow. Looks like it requires a lot of patience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not something you do all the time. It's like any other hobby or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
You have to want to do it at that particular time, or be at a frame of mind to do it.
Right.
Because it does require, a good bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
I know children come along and they'll say, well, that takes a long time. And I say, well, what's Granny doing while Grandpa was making a basket? And I said, and more than likely, she was in the house piecing a quilt. I said, how long do you think it takes to make a quilt? A long time. I said, that's right. It takes a long time for Grandpa or whatever to make a basket.
Wow.
But it's rewarding. When you get it about done, you look at your work and say, well, I'm proud I did that. But it does require patience, and it requires time, and you have to watch what you're doing, because the first thing you know, the strip will strip off to one side,
Right.
instead of being two pieces like that. Now I'll take this one, doesn't matter which one, this one, and I'll strip it in two more pieces.
So, how do you know which strip is best?
Well, I'll use everything.
Okay.
I'll use it one way or another. I may not use it in the basic mechanism, but see around the top, see that little piece right there?
Right.
If a piece is not good enough to run the sides, I can strip it and, lace it around the top.
Uh-huh.
Or I can make the handle. See, the handle's made out of one that's been bent over. See, like
Right.
that one is there.
Right.
Well, this is, like I said, this is all for show for the Peinhardt Farm Day. But in a genuine situation, your press is usually up on a hill, say on an elevation of 3 to 5 feet above what your mill is. And then you got a horse or a mule, or a lot of people sometimes use a tractor on these old pull type mills, and that thing will make a lot of juice. It'll keep enough juice made to cook as you go. And they come out, you put your cane in, the little end first, and don't overdo it. And it comes out of the bottom of those rollers, and you put, and a lot of people run it into like just a plastic gutter, and it runs down into a vat like we had sitting over here in front of the pan. And as they keep that can full, they stop the horse, you know, until they need some more juice, and just keep coming. That little contraption right there will more than make enough juice to run that pan. Now we do it in a hurry and use the big electric one out there, but these are very dangerous because it has to be hand fed. Usually the kids do it, and you always caution them to be sleeveless, because if the cane is in joints. If a splinter on the joint hangs a shirt and gets your arm into that, you just got hurt. So you have to be real cautious, and that's another reason we use the electric one and the grown men do it, because you have to. The kids have a bobblehead by doing this right here all day, you know, because you got to duck that trommel every time it comes around. But that's the old way, and they still do that. The Mennonite people up in Tennessee, they still use the old horse drawn, most of them, but they cook with gas. They cook with gas, but they still use the old horse drawn press, and you can take those, we call them plummies, what's left after you squeeze the juice out of it. You can run them through a chipper and cut it up, and make some really good cow feed, because they'll eat it just like that, but they get a lot more out of it if you chip it up.
Right.
They get a lot more nutrition out of it, but it makes good cow feed, but that'll just probably get piled up somewhere, you know, and we'll let the yellow jackets have it.
We've come up here and cooked bad cane, not made much syrup at all. And then we've come up, this is the best cane we've had since I've been able to do this. And we've probably got a good, since we started this morning, about probably 12 or 14 gallons of syrup. It takes about 10 gallons of juice to make a gallon of syrup. That's if you've got good. And like I said, if you dry your cane, let it dry 4 or 5 days on the trailer. So that takes a lot of the water out, and then you get a gallon for like every 8 gallons of juice versus a gallon of 10. This cane was probably 2 days on the trailer. We squeezed it off Thursday, and it's cool enough and kept it. You have to be careful doing that because it'll come in. It gets too warm.
Why do you start on one end and go to the other? Does it work its way down?
Yeah.
And what?
Well, when you put it down here, you want a hot fire on this end of the pan. You see those green components there? That's your, we call that skimming. That's the impurities that comes out of the cane itself. You're taking that off because that'll make the syrup bitter. All right, and when you get on down closer to the surface, take it in, your skimming starts getting lighter. See how light those are? Because that's got water mixed with it. And once you get all your skimmings off, you get a little tiny roll of bubbles on those last 3 bars. That's actually the syrup. The longer you cook it, the thicker it gets. This is some really good syrup. It's really hot when it comes off the pan, and we've been trying to let the kids and this and that and sample it. But the reason for starting on one end, you have to manage it. Each one of those stations has a different purpose of eating.
And it works its way down itself?
See, you're actually lower down here than you are there. And you want to have, you may have 5 gallons of juice right here in these 2 sections here. But by the time it heats and expands and comes down there, you've only got 2 gallons. Because the purpose of that is, like I said, it doesn't take as much heat on that end to keep it boiled. If you just left the pan the same depth for one and the other, you'd never get the appearance that the
Right.
so good. It has to be a little higher